And let's bring in now Sky News hosts Paul Murray and Liz Storer. Welcome.
I take Dutton over her all day, every day, twice on Sundays.
Well, not to go straight back to Israel, but yesterday, nothing about the weekend protests and what happened outside Caulfield. She was quick to tweet about Donald Trump Jr., as you said, but, nothing about similar figures in those terrorist preachers in recent weeks.
Home Affairs is for the toughest of souls, the strongest of hearts, because there are plenty of people who will game the system, play the system and use all of the emotion of the system. This government's already made the ludicrous decision that most of the 50,000 people who arrived here illegally by boat, the last time they were around, they end up becoming permanent citizens. Message sent back through the system, look, it'll be uncomfortable, but wait it out. The decision of the High Court sends exactly the same message. The Immigration Minister stands up today and says, yes, they're all on welfare. And what is inexplicable about this situation is the court is independent, can make its ruling, but the government knew the case was before it. She said it herself. They were arguing the case, which means you have to prepare yourself for if you lose it.
Yeah.
What's the plan? Is it going to be some sort of way of being able to constantly monitor, to force these people with these records to have to turn up to a police station once a week? What about putting a tag on some of these people?
But that costs the taxpayer so much money.
Correct.
And we're talking about 93 more detainees on top of the 80 we've just seen released. And when you consider that some of these offences include murder, these aren't just petty traffic fines or what have you, although those are also in the lineup of offences. I don't think we so much care about those. But when you are talking about murderers now being let back out into the community, and here we have our government literally just baying at each other during question and answer time today, instead of actually going, why don't you just push through new legislation?
Correct.
Why don't you treat this like the emergency that it is, and you uphold your responsibility to the Australian people to keep them safe, because you've obviously failed them once by letting them out into the community in the first place. They've offended. Now you're being told you're not allowed to keep them locked up. Stop talking like you aren't the lawmakers and therefore responsible for the fact that this has happened, and it will continue to happen if you don't act very quickly and decisively.
Because it's this thing, sorry, I was going to say, federal government can't control the outcome of the court.
Of the High Court.
So, it's mischievous to pretend that under the Albanese government, right. But what they can control is the response. And the response, of course, was that this decision was made last week, and effectively the government has done nothing since. It has waited until now, the second day of the beginning of the end of question time. We're being told that legislation to potentially deal with this doesn't come anywhere near the Parliament till next year. Not acceptable, not okay. But what are you surprised? This, as Sharri says, is from the very same minister who can't dare talk about a hate preacher, not dare say that she would use ASIO, the AFP, anything like that to go after the people who are so brazen that they are recording what they are saying and putting it out on the internet. There is something weird at the heart of the people running Home Affairs right now, and if they think touchy-feely is the way to protect the country will respond.
Well, it's not just Home Affairs, Paul, it's the entire government. They seem to forget that actually they are in government now. Actually, you are the Prime Minister now, you are the Foreign Minister, you are the Home Affairs Minister, and it is up to you to protect Australians, all Australians, not just your voters in marginal Western Sydney seats, but people who might not vote for you, who might live in Teal seats or Liberal seats, the Jewish community. It is your job to protect all Australians, not just some. And this is what they seem to be forgetting. In respect of this immigration, like you said, Liz, why haven't they explored, in advance of the High Court decision being handed down, whether to put ankle bracelets that can track people, whether to have them check in at local police stations, rush through emergency legislation, but it shouldn't even need to be emergency legislation because they've been in government for over a year and a half now. They knew this was coming.
Yep. And what are you doing all day in that place if it's not to make the laws and close the loopholes to ensure things like this never, ever happen? And to your point about these MPs who clearly seem to be shilling for votes and know that there is perhaps more Muslim votes in their particular constituency than there is Jewish votes in their particular constituency, something that they need to remember is there is a heck heck of a lot of Gentiles who have beef in this fight too, because we are watching what is occurring. And we too vote. So if they're genuinely playing that game based on what is the demographic of the people who vote in my seat, don't be weighing up those numbers because they're lying to you. We are watching and we vote too.
Yeah, I mean, also, illegal immigration versus legal immigration, be it in any community of faith, Australians they've made this very clear, right? If you want to say that over the past couple of elections, Australians made it very clear about climate change, they made it very clear for about 20 years, the delineation between legal and illegal immigration, all right? And how illegal immigration needs to be dealt with. But just remember, just think back to the form of this government about when they are faced with a decision to be hard-hearted or otherwise, the ISIS brides. Remember the ISIS brides that, of course, Peter Dutton said no, put the application, bottom of the field, bottom of the field, bottom of the field. What happened? They came straight back. Now, did these people go on to commit terror attacks? No, but the whole point was...
Touch wood,
Of course. But the whole point is that that's the message that gets sent. If you send any other message then, unless you come through the front door, unless you take care of the country that you live in, then we're going to find ways to keep you out of the joint. This government, multiple facets now, is finding ways to not do that.
But what's frightening is this is a trend among the West. In the UK, you just get across the channel, you're in. They're literally saying we can't take any more. UK taxpayers are forking out millions of pounds per day to put these people up. In America, we're seeing the same. The southern border is just an absolute free-for-all. The Biden administration's doing absolutely nothing to stop it. These sanctuary cities are becoming absolute slums right under the nose of Americans. And here you see Australia seemingly going down that path, obviously to a much smaller degree. But one wonders if we didn't have the geographic advantage of being a giant island, I dare say that this government would be just as weak as the Biden administration has been in protecting their borders, because if this is how they treat the Crims...
Or if they didn't know it was electoral suicide.
Well, you've got to hope it still is. This is the thing. We keep being told how everything's changed, how everything's softened, everything's some grand left revolution that took place in May of last year. Well, the voice vote showed, no, there's still a beating heart of common sense for people to draw a line somewhere. You would hope that is still there in this scenario, because I tell you what, watching Question Time today, watching the arrogance of the government basically now trying to go into get Dutton on every single answer, every single time, and then on substantive issues they can't even answer Di Lee about things like cutting petrol tax. Watch this space. It's going to get very interesting.
Yeah, I think the most amazing thing is that, we thought the Albanese team took a small target strategy to the last election, and then all we've seen since then are the most vast, radical policies, whether it's misinformation or IR.
But that's the thing, get the power and then say we need to keep it because the other guy's too extreme.